Hello, good afternoon, good morning, and welcome to all our attendees. Thank you for joining us on time. We will begin the webinar in around 30 to 40 seconds. We're just waiting for some attendees to join. So just please bear with us for another 30, 40 seconds. Right, so welcome all of you once again to our short and insightful joint webinar conducted by iBASIS and Kaleido Intelligence. Today we are focusing on the exciting, but let me add, challenging topic of 5G roaming. So this week we will launch a joint webinar publication on 5G roaming, looking into the MNO opportunities and requirements from a commercial as well as technical perspective. Now, this will be made available to all the attendees later this week after following the webinar. So please feel free to share this with your team, with your company, and get in touch with us with any feedback that you have, or if you need any support with any product support from iBASIS, please let us know. So we will share the details on how to get in touch with us towards the end of this webinar. So once again, thank you all for joining. Now, firstly, let me quickly introduce the panel. My name is Nitin Bass. I'm the strategy and insights lead here at Kaleido Intelligence. I'm also one of the lead authors of this white paper, and I oversee Kaleido's research into wholesale and retail roaming. Now, joining me today, we have a fantastic team of experts: Stefan Sorrell from Kaleido and Mehmet Turinç from iBasis. Mehmet is the 5G expert at iBasis. He's the senior product manager for 5G roaming and value-added services. He's very experienced leading product teams across various telco companies in the past. So I believe Mehmet is very well suited, and he's the right person for presenting some of the key findings and views from iBasis today. So welcome, Mehmet.
Thank you, Nitin. I appreciate it.
Sure. And we also have Mr. IoT, Stefan Sorrell, today with us. He's one of the lead authors of the white paper. Stefan was running the survey, so he was responsible for running the operator survey that provided a majority of the insights that went into this white paper. He's also chief of research at Kaleido, and he oversees a lot of our IoT mobile roaming data sets, and his expertise is really around IoT and connected devices at Kaleido. And so that's our fantastic team. Let's have a look at the agenda for today. So we'll keep it very short. You know, we do not want to take much of your time today. We'll begin with a quick introduction into our study, you know, the market research and the white paper that we've done, the joint white paper that we've done. I'll then pass on to Stefan who will then take us through some of the key findings from the research white paper, and then myself and Mehmet would share some recommendations, some on how we think operators must approach 5G, and Mehmet will share some best practice guidelines and how iBasis can help you address any requirements and achieve the 5G goals going forward. So the survey, Kaleido ran a survey, an operator survey during between the months of January to March in 2020. We surveyed around 60 plus participants from leading mobile operators around the world. You know, we asked around 20 questions focused on MNO needs, what they consider as the most important 5G roaming requirement. not just from a technical perspective, as I mentioned earlier on, also from a commercial perspective. We then used the survey findings to produce a 20-page white paper full of insights, ranging from expected launch of 5G roaming and from a non-standalone and standalone perspective, what are the key technical requirements they expect or they require from an IPX, from their IPX partners, and also how security, signaling, and interworking will play an important role in 5G roaming. We've also included some forecasts for inbound and outbound traffic and revenues for 5G roaming, and also we include some sort of recommendations for the stakeholders on, as well as a roadmap on when and how we expect 5G roaming will take place over the next few years. As I mentioned earlier, the report will be made available to you later this week. In the meantime, we've also published a free report on our website, which looks into the impact of COVID-19, the pandemic that's having on mobile roaming, how it has impacted traffic, revenues. It has changed or slowed or impacted the deployment plans on VoLTE roaming as well as 5G roaming for the operators. So please feel free to check that out on our website. Let me now hand over to Stefan, who will share some key findings from the white paper. Stefan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Nitin. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today. Glad to be here. So without further ado, let's dive into some of the key findings of the white paper. So let's kick off with some statistics. So according to Kaleido's forecasts, talking about the total 5G device base. So we're looking at, by 2024, just over 2 billion 5G connections. Now, the vast majority of those will be within the so-called consumer sector. We believe that IoT is going to be a little bit behind due to various reasons, cost being one of them, as well as some other factors in play there. But naturally, not all those devices will be roaming. So what does it look like from a traffic perspective? So by 2024, we're going to see just over 500 petabytes of roaming traffic globally. Clearly, as I mentioned, most of that is going to be stemming from consumer mobile devices. But actually, despite the fact that 5G will still be at a relatively early stage by then, that roaming traffic is going to represent roughly 25% of global roaming traffic. And the reason being is because I think we all know about the virtuous circle of data. I mean, typically, what we've seen from discussions that we've had with industry experts is that we see a significant rise in data use when users transition to 5G devices. So that is going to translate into a significant uplift in data consumption. With that in mind, what are operators' plans for 5G roaming? So as if you have a look at the chart on the right, you can see that actually that a significant number of operators plan to launch 5G roaming this year. So in total, whether the first half or second half of this year, 76% of our survey respondents said that they intended to launch 5G roaming. Now, it's important to note at this stage, actually, that this mainly concerns 5G NSA roaming. So where option 3 is used, where the 4G evolved packet core, the EPC, is still in use, along with 5G new radio. 5G standalone is going to take some time, but we will still see launches for that certainly coming in at an increasing pace as of next year. Bear in mind, of course, these survey results came in Q1, so there may be some moderate impacts as a result of the COVID pandemic, something to bear in mind, of course. Okay, so we also asked operators what their key priorities were for 5G roaming. And this ties nicely into what I was talking about just now. 44% of respondents view that the availability for high capacity, so enhanced mobile broadband services, which are generally linked to so-called consumer endpoints or traditional enterprise endpoints. These are seen as extremely important in the first instance. I mean, that's even more important when we consider what's going on right now. For example, Mehmet, Nitin, and I, all working from home right now, we're relying on home broadband connections. What we've seen recently is an increasing demand for things like cellular failover, so SD-WAN, to support a secondary connection. That is going to continue into the future, no doubt, which will increase the demand for eMBB services. Second most important, viewed by operators, was the issue of security. So 41% of respondents mentioned that they viewed adequate security as being very important to their 5G roaming launches. Interestingly, obviously, when you look at the media and so on, 5G is, you can almost never see a 5G article without the mention of network slicing. And this is something that is certainly viewed as a potential revenue opportunity moving forward. But when we look at the results of the survey, things like network slicing, URLC, so ultra reliable, low latency, MMNTC, massive machine type communications, these are seen as lower priority for deployment at present. And the reason being is because things like consumer devices, high bandwidth, tend to generate high revenues from the outset, which is important to ensuring a return on investment. I've just mentioned how important security is, and this ties heavily into the issue of 5G signaling. So as the transition to 5G happens, that also means a transition to a new signaling protocol, so HTTP2, which, when you consider the devices that are out there, particularly across various networks or at various stages of development around the world, as well as the vast majority of IoT devices, all of these connections will be coexisting alongside HTTP2. So there'll be a plethora of devices that continue to use SS7 signaling, for example, GTP, and of course diameter. Now that means that there is a significant, first of all, demand for things like signaling interworking. And you can see that on the chart to the right there. 60% of our survey respondents viewed that signaling interworking at the IPX was very important to them. And that's because of the reasons I've just mentioned. What it also means is that because things like SS7 will continue to be demanded, and that's particularly the case in IoT devices where SS7 is used to, for example, open a connection to the data channel. This means that these legacy protocols will still pose a threat to newer networks. And when you consider that 5G, the design of it is there to support a vast number of devices, that also means that 5G means a much greater attack surface than what we've been used to before, which in turn means that ensuring an adequate, robust security solution is more important than ever before. And things like converged solutions for firewalling and signaling and so on over the traditional standalone appliance will become much more important as we move towards 5G as a result. So keeping on the subject of security, so when we asked operators what their key priorities there were for in the context of IPX, so it's not surprising to see that the SEPP, so Security Edge Protection Proxy, which is the new signaling firewall for 5G, that is the most important thing for operators at present. On the other hand, because of the level of encryption that's involved, so the SEPP offers end-to-end encryption, end-to-end authentication, but that means that there may be some challenges when you consider roaming VAS, value-added services. So things like welcome messages, upselling, or so on, may be disrupted when there's a heavy implementation of encryption across the network. In turn, however, there are opportunities, which I'll come on to in a second. So talked briefly about network slicing earlier. So while that is something that may be of lower priority right now, it's certainly something that we view coming to the fore into the medium term. But in turn, that also introduces new security risks. So any participant in a network slicing contract, a third party within the network slicing contract, may require access to a partner's NRF, so the Network Repository Functions Service, which could expose sensitive information, which naturally poses a security risk. So there's two interesting things there concerning the encryption, as well as new challenges posed by emerging 5G services. But it also provides an opportunity for IPX providers. So on the one hand, a hosted set could offer and maintain the ability to deploy value-added services, while on the other hand, the IPX could act potentially as a trusted intermediary in the network slicing process, and thus protect both parties from potential security issues. Now, new services that will come out from 5G, I mentioned that URLC is perhaps slightly lower priority for operators right now, but we also asked them what particular services might be that they were considering right now on an international scale. And it was interesting to see that vehicle services and healthcare services are seen as relatively interesting to operators right now. For the reasons I've talked about, I think this is probably a longer term bet. So it's something that moves into the medium to longer term, because in the first instance, emphasis will be on monetizing the high revenue applications that are enabled by a consumer and traditional enterprise devices. What's important to note, however, is that things like URLC are enabled by edge computing. So part of the white paper that we produced was to look into what are the opportunities for operators. And we see something like edge computing, which in turn enables URLC, as something that can be monetized in the near term. So when we look at what the opportunities are right now, for example, in the industrial and smart city environment, we already see demand for things like private networks, which are powered by edge computing nodes. So we've seen companies such as Bosch, for example, and some others over in Germany who have already petitioned their regulator for licenses to roll out private networks inside their factories. As some of you may be aware, the new radio unlicensed spec was recently finalized by the 3GPP, which in turn increases the rollout potential for edge networks. Private networks. In terms of things like network slicing, mobile AR, VR, and vehicle applications, we see those as emerging at a later time. So, for example, mobile AR and VR, when you consider edge computing, will require, first of all, a significant amount of infrastructure. And that's purely a case of the computing power that's required to support a large number of users. So that will take some time to build out. In the case of vehicles, things like V2I, V2V, these are not going to see mass traction until 2023 at the earliest, which in turn will take some time to build up. And those things will mainly be driven by regulation in What's important, however, is that when you consider private networks, during our discussions for the production of the white paper, almost all of our interviewees mentioned that having access to the macro network is key to getting the full benefit of a private network, which in turn means that security, when you consider devices across those two deployments, is fundamental. Meanwhile, when network slicing, when we inquired the operators about how the business model is going to be deployed, it was quite a mixed bag. So 38% of respondents reckon that common standardized slicing partners, slices will be used between roaming partners, while 25% believe that a federated slicing model will be used. So that's another reason why network slicing is perhaps going to take a little longer to become to see major deployments into the future. Okay, so those are some of the key findings. By the way, I do encourage all attendees, if you do have any questions in anything in regard to anything I've been talking about, anything Nitin or Mehmet are talking about, please do add your comments into the chat, and we can hopefully address those in the Q&A. So back to you, Nitin.
Thanks, Stefan. Thank you. I was just about to mention that. I think I missed mentioning that at the beginning of this webinar. So yeah, Stefan says, feel free to use the chat box. Send us any questions. We'll try and answer them all at the end of this webinar. If not, we will get in touch with you directly to answer them. Okay, so let's look at some based on the survey and our conversations with experts from iBASIS and some of the other roaming vendors and operators. We have put together a roadmap graphic that illustrates our view on key milestones for 5G roaming, and in the next line, I've also outlined some recommendations on what operators need to put in place and when. So as you know, in 2019, many markets around the world switched on their 5G networks, with vendors offering new 5G mobile devices. But what we've seen is, along with the growth in 5G connections from a domestic point of view, 5G roaming agreements are also on the rise. We've witnessed, from 2019, we witnessed a lot of a few 5G roaming agreements that's being rolled out. Deployments, as Stefan mentioned earlier on, deployments so far have been on non-standalone network modes. In our survey, there were quite a few operators who suggested that they expect standalone networks to be launched in 2020 with some roaming agreements in place by the end of this year. But these timescales, we'll admit, that could potentially take a backseat following the impact of COVID-19 on mobile roaming. In fact, I mentioned this at the beginning of this webinar. There was another survey that we conducted in March to understand the scale of impact COVID-19 is having on mobile roaming, and it seems that there is an immediate disruption to operators' 5G and VoLTE roaming rollout plans, which is not unexpected. I think there's a stat. So nearly 18% of the respondents confirmed a delay to their roaming 5G non-standalone roaming rollout plan. So in comparison to nearly 15% expecting or confirming delays to their VoLTE roaming rollout plan. So it is very likely that with testing expected to resume later this quarter and later on this year, we will see operators continue to pursue with their 5G roaming plans in 2021, with majority of operators expecting a recovery in both roaming traffic and revenues in 2021. Now, we know that VoLTE roaming has been a hurdle all this time, and we believe that will gain further traction, not in 2020, but also in 2021, as the transition towards 5G standalone commences. So I think we expect 5G standalone roaming agreements to begin in 2021. Just like Stefan mentioned in the previous slides, Kaleido believes that the rollout of 5G roaming services for massive machine type communications and ultra reliable low latency communication use cases, firstly, these needs to be established, and when established, these will be dependent on operators' ability to secure a return on investment. And we believe that this will be only finalized beyond 2027, which means the immediate focus of network operators as well as IPX vendors and partners will be on getting the network upgrades to 5G standalone and improving the capacity to meet enhanced mobile broadband use case requirements. Now, based on the above roadmap, we have put together a list of recommendations. Firstly, the most important thing is to prioritize and define a 5G roaming strategy in place. Work with your roaming partners and work with roaming vendors to overcome all technical challenges, understand the technical challenges, come up with a strategy in place. I think capacity was found to be an important requirement. So place an emphasis on capacity, security, as well as introducing new signaling and interworking protocols and functions. And thirdly, operators will need to focus on progressing the migration from 4G core to 5G, and then, as a result, enable the transition from a non-standalone to standalone network architecture. But this also means that the operators will need to speed up any work towards VoLTE roaming rollout as the transition towards 5G standalone commences. And as I mentioned earlier, enhanced mobile broadband application will drive traffic over the next 4 to 5 years. So it is critical that going forward, we identify the use cases that will drive the MMTC and ultra reliable low latency communication services. And finally, I think it's having the right partnership in place. Having to focus on finding the right vendor, the IPX vendor, to deliver. The operators will need IPX vendors to deliver a greater flexibility and scalability in terms of 5G roaming, ranging from signaling and steering to clearing and settlement. So these are some of the highlighted recommendations that we've put together in the white paper. We discuss more and beyond in the white paper. So please do check this section out. Let me now hand over to Mehmet, who will now take you through the MNO expectations and how we can help them, how iBASIS can help address these expectations, achieve the roaming opportunities and goals going forward. Mehmet, over to you.
Thank you, Nitin. Welcome everybody. And my name is Mehmet Runç. I'm working at iBASIS as a senior product manager. Today, I want to touch about the mobile network operators' readiness, especially for the 5G roaming. What are the needs? What shall be done? How to be prepared? And how iBASIS is following this 5G topic. At first, I wanted to give a brief introduction about iBASIS because after the latest acquisitions, there are lots of things going on, especially in the 2019. Everything starts with Tofan Global. Tofan Global acquired 3 major carriers in Europe, and SFR International Carrier Services, MIO International Carrier Services, and Altis. After that, suddenly, Tofan Global became the 9th biggest voice carrier in the world. Then, last year, Tofan Global acquired iBASIS, and with the customer base of iBASIS, it became one of the top 3 IPX providers and the 8th biggest voice carrier in the world. After that, all the brands and the solutions are unified under iBASIS brand. And last year, Tofan Global acquired NOS International Carrier Services this year, And after that, 2+ billion more minutes and more than 100 customers came. And after the EU regulation, it will be unified under iBASIS brand too. Our product portfolio actually consists of everything. As iBASIS, almost anything you can imagine in the international wholesale market, we can do. And we call it iBASIS palette of services. Core services are in the middle with the IPX signaling with 2G, 3G, 4G, and 5G, and GRX and local breakout options and data transport in the middle. And then we are covering all the value-added services on the top. So you are getting one single connection, signaling in the core, surrounded by transport and GRX with the local breakout option. Then you can choose whatever service you want. Anything, clearing, security, value-added services, analytics, messaging, anything. And right now, after the first introduction of iBASIS, I want to come to our real topic, 5G roaming. I will not go into details about what 5G brings, what are the expectations. We all know that. And there are already 57 launch networks in the world and 88 were planned. But from the MNO's point of view, rather than saying that, okay, 5G is bringing this and this, I want to focus on what is required from the mobile network operator's point of view, what are the new things to be considered, what are the expectations of the MNOs, and as iBASIS, how we can facilitate and help the community for this early adoption, especially for the standalone roaming. Because we know that all these launches, 57 launches in the world, are non-standalone. So that means 5G radio network is being used, but the core network is 4G core. But the real benefits of 5G, like ultra-low latency, enhanced security, network slicing, are coming with the 5G core. And 5G is standalone, which means that you have to invest your 5G core. In the next slide, I will show that Kaleido Intelligence, as my colleagues already explained, has done a tremendous work and asked around more than 20 detailed questions to more than 660 MNOs. And we already combined them together with Kaleido Intelligence and iBASIS and published an white paper which you can download from our website and Kaleido's website end of this week. From the survey and the key findings of the white paper, we are able to emphasize the 4 major points. Security and high availability are the top priorities. Local breakout is very important. IPXs should be able to manage the capacity increase, and signaling interworking is the most innovative thing in the 5G world. So as iBASIS, in the right, you will see that what we are doing in order to match these requirements. Yes, we have redundant, secure, and high availability in infrastructure, and each year we are investing to improve our infrastructure and monitoring our SLAs with the customers. Local breakout is very important, let's say, and as iBASIS, we have LBO patents and LBO live deployment. So we know this topic very well, and we have experts and closely following this topic. In order to manage the capacity increase, we already upgraded our network to 100 gig level right now. So for the signaling interworking, we are building our innovation lab, which we call it 5G Sandbox, with the different kind of testing scenarios and encouraging the mobile network operators to contribute this. You remember the standalone diagram which I showed you previously. For the standalone part, just zoom into the core part. As you can see, there are 2 network operators, home and visitor network, and there's an IPX network in the middle, because you don't need to make a one-on-one interconnection with hundreds of partners. You just connect to IPX like iBASIS, and we will do the rest. But the innovations comparing to the 4G and 3G, the previous models, there is a new component, which Stefan already mentioned about it, SEP, Security Edge Protection Proxy. What SEP does? SEP is some kind of a firewall and signaling interconnection equipment. let's not say equipment, because in the 5G world, everything is functions, virtual, and it's a new function. And if you want to connect to another operator, you have to build your own set. The second innovation is the new protocol. It's not like S7 or diameter anymore. It's HTTP2. Everything is web-based, and these two innovations, major innovations, SEP function and HTTP2 signaling, has to be taken into account. Of course, you have to choose your interconnection model and you have to configure it. But two major things for the 5G standalone roaming are SEP and HTTP2 protocol. For these innovations, what we are doing in order to match these as iBASIS, we are building, as I said, our 5G roaming hub with a testing environment, which we call it 5G sandbox. There are some interconnection models are being discussed in 3GPP and GSMA working groups. We are contributing them, and we are getting the ideas of the experts from other IPX providers and other big groups. Also, everybody is contributing, and right now, two methods are being chosen, let's say, in the standardization, TLS and Prince, but it doesn't matter. All in all, I want to say that whatever method you choose, TLS, Prince, or new kind of interconnection model, as iBASIS, we support it. So you can either build your own SEP and choose an interconnection model, we support it, we can help you. Or you don't need to, or you don't want to invest on the SEP and the configuration and security kind of stuff, you can outsource this kind of responsibility to us. So we can provide hosted and managed SEP for you. All in all, additional layer of security with our existing enhanced signal firewalls and DDoS prevention could be supported with this bundle too. And last but not least, I want to touch about our 5G alignment, which is not new for us, because our standalone 5G standalone program is started 2018, so 2 years ago. We are contributing almost in 2 years, and we created a special private group on LinkedIn, which is called VoLTE and 5G Roaming. It is not a public group, so in this kind of events, we are trying to promote it in order to get the real attention and who is doing 5G and VoLTE roaming and who would like to do. So these kind of experts are coming together in this group. In the next slide, I will give the URL of this link, or you can simply go to ibasis.com and see the LinkedIn group's URL. And then we released our first white paper, which is focusing on the 5G benefits and the challenges. So you can download through our website too. In the beginning of this year, we started 5G Sandbox project. So we are trying to be ready for the standalone 5G testing Q3 this year. So I encourage everybody to come our innovation lab, which I will call on the next slide, and try to contribute, because we are not saying that, okay, we just opened it and try to test. We are encouraging everybody, and everybody will contribute, and we will learn, you will learn, and we will do it together. And then for the live deployment, and this week, we are launching our second white paper, which Stefan and Nitin already told about it, which is focusing on the MNO's expectations for the 5G roaming. And for the live deployments, we are waiting for next year. Actually, it was this year, but because of the COVID-19 effect, some of the big groups and private networks, private LTE and private 5G companies are delayed a little. So in the early period of the next year, we will see the live deployments and the commercial agreements. But we don't see 5G as an independent topic, because as iBASIS, there are some kind of activities which we already do today, which is directly related with 5G, like narrowband IoT, which is one of the biggest driver of the 5G massive machine type communications, or local breakout. For the low latency, LBO deployments has to be done also, which we are doing. Or security with our enhanced signaling firewall and DDoS protection is an additional layer to the 5G security. And as I said, we encourage everybody to look at the iBASIS Innovation Exchange, which consists of insights, webinars, demos for the exchange of new ideas. You can access it through ibasis.com/innovation. And we also have a roundtable for 5G and VoLTE experts. Actually, it was a physical roundtable before, but right now we're considering virtual ones. We will inform the community about it. So you can see this roundtable's URL in the below. And at last, please contact with us if you have any advice, if you need any advice or any kind of ideas to test your 5G standalone roaming in our innovation lab. Please contact with us. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I will hand over to Nitin for now.
Perfect. Thank you, Mehmet. Very exciting, insightful indeed. Thank you so much. I think we do have 5 minutes for a few questions, so we'll try to take as many as possible. If not, please don't worry. We will get in touch with you straight after the webinar to discuss it. So just looking at the chat. So there's a question on whether operators are considering an alternative charging model for non-standalone 5G roaming. Stefan, do you want to take this question?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, what was the question?
So are operators considering an alternative charging model for non-standalone 5G roaming?
Okay, yeah, good question. I think we have to look at it in two ways. So what's happening right now and what's going to happen in the future. So right now what we see is it's a little bit of a mixed bag. So on the one hand, there's a few operators who are looking to charge a premium on 5G roaming. I think there's a Finnish operator who is charging something like 20 euros per unit. Forgive me, I can't remember exactly what that unit is. But then again, there are some other European operators who have already said that consumer business models are on the retail side are not going to change, at least into the near term. On the other hand, what we have seen through what Nitin was talking about early on in the presentation is that some operators are now looking to renegotiate their inter-operator tariffs. I can't give you any statistics off the top of my head there. I don't know, Nitin, if you can remember. But certainly those discussions are going on. Yeah. Now, when we look into the near term, so over the next couple of years, what we will see most likely is perhaps some innovative activity from operators in regard to things like edge computing on the one hand, and then network slicing perhaps a little later. And that will certainly provide new opportunities and new business models. So, for example, we already see operators like Vodafone, for example, providing an outcome-based business model for things like IoT. There's an MVNO out there once who is providing SIM cards for 10 euros for 10 years. Now, these are breaking the mold of traditional per unit business model pricing. And that's something that we'll likely see as we head into the early stages of 5G NSA rollouts. But like I said, right now it's a bit of a mixed bag, but I certainly think we'll see some innovation moving forward.
Okay. Thank you, Stefan. Will you be sharing today's slide deck? Yes, we will. We will upload the presentation, the recorded version. So if you've missed any sections, you can catch up on it. We'll also make the white paper available to you guys very soon. I think we've got 1 minute left, so I'll take one more question quickly. Mehmet, maybe you could take this one. What is the current status on mobile 5G roaming testing? Is this being delayed due to COVID-19, and when can we expect to commercialize these agreements? Mehmet, if you could just answer this question, maybe also, add on how iBASIS views this.
Yeah, cool. Good question, by the way. Yes, right now, some of the operators are trying to test 5G standalone, but the standards are not set yet. So that's why it's not live and nobody is testing. For NSA, yes, everybody is doing, and we are already delivering 5G NSA roaming traffic within our core. But for 5G SA, because of the COVID-19, we are expecting a little delay, as I already mentioned in my presentation. For the commercial agreements, most probably it will come next year, but the testing, we are expecting later this year, because the big groups, not the MNOs only, because everybody is focusing on the MNOs, but 5G private networks and LTE private networks also try to encourage themselves, to launch this 5G roaming site. So later this year, we are expecting the testing, let's say.
Sure. Okay, thanks, Mehmet. I think just to add to that, we Kaleido conducted a survey, as I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, a survey on how COVID-19 is impacting mobile roaming operators' roadmap and plans. I think there were some interesting insights, so please feel free to download that. We've got a couple more questions in the chat box, but we will reach out to you separately. And before we finish the webinar, we would like to thank you all. And our team will be in touch following this webinar with a copy of the white paper, as well as we'll make sure we upload the video presentation today for you to watch again. And if you have any questions about the white paper once you've had a chance to look through it, if you need to receive more insights, if you need more support from iBASIS or from us at all, please contact us, drop us an email, go to iBASIS website, reach out to Mehmet on LinkedIn, reach out to us on info@kaleidointelligence.com, or we can then get you in touch with the right expert team to help you out with your inquiries. So thank you once again for joining us today. I hope you have enjoyed the webinar. Please keep safe. Stay safe. Thank you, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.